Rich man tries to chop off 4-year-old beggar's hand with hatchet, but this horse saw and did something. Comment what you think will happen. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. The sun lazily rose over Harmony Creek, painting the surrounding Appalachian Mountains in hues of gold. On the dirt roads of the small town in West Virginia, a few people were already hurrying to their morning chores, but no one paid any attention to the small, huddled figure beneath the awning of the old apothecary. Iris was only 4 years old, but her eyes carried a weight that no child should bear. Her brown hair was matted and dirty, and her tattered clothes barely covered her thin frame. She had spent another sleepless night, shivering with cold and hunger, hoping that maybe her mom would come back for her. It had been 3 weeks since Carmela, her 22-year-old mother, had left, saying she was going to get bread and never returned. Iris still remembered her last words, "Stay here, sweetheart. Mommy will be right back." But the days passed, and the cruel reality settled in the little girl's heart. She was completely alone in the world. Hunger gnawed at her small stomach like a merciless claw. Iris had learned to scavenge through trash cans behind the diners, competing with stray dogs for scraps of food. Her delicate little hands were bruised and cut from rummaging through broken glass and rusty cans. At night, when the cold cut like a knife, she curled up in dark corners, dreaming of her mother's warm embrace, which she might never feel again. That Tuesday morning, the scent of fresh fruit awakened something in Iris. A flatbed truck, pulled by 2 mules, stopped right in front of the awning where she was hiding. The driver, a middle-aged man in simple clothes, began unloading crates of oranges, apples, and bananas to stock the grocery store next door. The little girl's eyes lit up when she saw a red apple that rolled off the truck and stopped right near her feet. She looked around, her heart pounding in her little chest. The man was busy talking to the store owner, his back to her. With cautious movements, Iris approached the fruit. Her little hands trembled when she finally managed to grab it, but fate had prepared a terrible trap for this innocent child. The flatbed truck didn't belong to a simple merchant. It was owned by Valentine Cortez, a 52-year-old man known throughout the region for his wealth and, above all, for his boundless cruelty. Owner of vast lands and herds, Valentine controlled much of the local economy through fear and intimidation. When he turned and saw the dirty girl holding his apple, something dark ignited in his dark eyes. Valentine was a tall, strong man with graying hair combed back and a scar that cut across his forehead on the left side. His expensive clothes contrasted with the rotten personality he carried inside. "You filthy brat!" he shouted, making Iris jump in fright. "Daring to steal what's mine!" Valentine's voice echoed through the street like thunder, causing some people to stop and stare. Iris dropped the apple on the ground, her little eyes filling with tears of terror. She tried to run, but her legs, weakened by malnutrition, couldn't. "Move fast enough. Where do you think you're going, you thief?" Valentine advanced towards the girl with long, determined strides. His face was contorted with rage, as if this hungry child was his worst enemy. It was then that something completely changed the course of that morning. From a nearby property, a white horse appeared, galloping. The animal had an immaculate coat like fresh snow, a long mane that danced in the wind, and large, expressive eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. No one knew exactly how old this horse was, but he appeared to be around 8 years old, in the prime of his life. The horse stopped between Valentine and Iris, as if he understood exactly what was happening. His eyes fixed on the cruel man, and something in the animal's behavior made Valentine take a few steps back. It was as if the horse recognized him, as if he knew exactly who he was and what he was capable of. "Get out of the way, you damn animal!" Valentine bellowed, but his voice trembled slightly. The horse didn't move. He remained there firm and protective between the aggressor and the defenseless child. Iris, still trembling, instinctively clung to the animal's leg, feeling for the first time in weeks something akin to safety. The tension in the air was palpable. Valentine looked around and realized that some people had stopped to watch the scene. His reputation as a respectable man could not be tarnished by a fight with an abandoned child in front of witnesses. But the rage he felt was like lava boiling in his veins. "This isn't over," he muttered through his teeth, casting a look that promised revenge on both the girl and the horse that dared to defy him. At that moment, as the sun continued its slow ascent across the West Virginia sky, three destinies intertwined. In the way that would forever change their lives, Iris had found an unexpected protector. The horse had chosen a cause to fight for, and Valentine Cortez had just made enemies who had no idea how much they could shake his world of cruelty and power. Chepe. People watching the scene began to disperse, whispering among themselves about the strange episode in the town square. Valentine waited until the street was emptier, his patience running out like sand in a broken hourglass. The hatred he felt for being challenged in front of others grew like a storm in his chest. Iris remained clinging to the horse's leg, her little fingers buried in the soft white fur. The animal lowered his head and gently touched the girl's face with his muzzle, a gesture so tender that it calmed her heart a little. It was the first demonstration of affection she had received since her mother had disappeared. "Very well," said Valentine, in a dangerously calm voice, like the quiet before an explosion. "If you want to play heroes, I'll show you what happens to those who defy me in my own town." The farmer walked to his truck and, from inside it, took out a hatchet he used to chop wood. The blade gleamed in the morning sun, reflecting the evil that dwelled in his eyes. Some people who were still nearby quickly moved away, recognizing the danger that was approaching. Iris didn't fully understand what was happening, but the instinct of a traumatized child screamed inside her that something terrible was about to occur. She tried to hide behind the horse, who remained motionless, like a white statue of protection and courage. "You miserable animal," Valentine growled, raising the hatchet above his head. "I'll teach you not to interfere where you're not wanted." The horse could have run away at that moment. He could have moved away and left the girl to face the fury of the cruel man alone. But something deep in his nature, a noble instinct that few animals possess, made him remain firm in his position, his large, expressive eyes fixed on Valentine, as if he were making a silent promise to the child behind him. The hatchet came down with brutal force, but instead of hitting Iris, as was the original intention, it struck the horse's neck. The animal let out a sharp whinny of pain that echoed through the surrounding mountains, a sound that seemed to carry all the injustice in the world. Red blood streamed down the white coat, creating a terrible contrast that would forever be etched in the girl's memory. "No!" Iris screamed with all the strength her little lungs could produce. It was a cry of despair, of horror, of a child who had just witnessed the cruelty of the adult world in its purest form. The horse staggered, but didn't fall. Even wounded, even with the piercing pain running through his body, he remained standing. He turned his head to Iris, and with a look that seemed to say, "Run," encouraged her to flee while there was still time. Valentine was satisfied with the result of his violence. A sadistic smile spread across his face as he watched the animal's blood. "That's what happens to those who defy me," he said, wiping the hatchet blade on his own clothes. "And you brat, are next." But when he raised his eyes to where Iris was, the girl had disappeared. Terror had given her weak legs a speed she didn't know she possessed. She ran towards the woods that surrounded the town, her bare feet stepping on stones and thorns. But the adrenaline of fear masked any physical pain. The wounded horse followed her, even with the wound bleeding and the pain he certainly felt. The animal did not abandon the child. Step by step, staggering but determined, he followed Iris into the woods, guided only by the sound of her sobs and the protective instinct that had awakened in his heart. Valentine watched the two disappear among the trees and let out a cruel laugh. "Run as much as you want," he muttered. "This town is mine, and you have nowhere to go." Iris ran until her legs couldn't take it anymore. When she finally stopped, she was in the middle of the woods, surrounded by tall trees and the sound of birds. Her clothes were even more torn by the branches, and small scratches covered her arms and legs. She threw herself on the ground and cried like she had never cried before. It was then that she heard the sound of hooves approaching slowly. The horse had found her. His white coat was stained with red, and he was breathing with difficulty. But his eyes remained gentle when he looked at the girl. Iris approached him carefully, her little hands gently touching the wound on his neck. "Does it hurt a lot?" she asked with a choked voice. The horse lowered his head and touched his forehead to hers, as if he were saying that everything would be okay. At that moment, in the midst of the wilderness of West Virginia, a friendship was born from pain and sacrifice. Iris had lost her mother, but she had found a protector. The horse had been wounded defending a stranger, but he had discovered a purpose, and both, wounded in body and soul, would have to learn to survive together in a world that seemed determined to destroy them. Meanwhile, in town, Valentine put away his hatchet and planned his next steps. He couldn't let witnesses to his violence live with impunity. The hunt had only just begun, and he would use all his power and influence to ensure that neither the girl nor the horse returned to tell what had happened. On that fateful morning, the dense forest swallowed Iris and the wounded horse like a dark embrace. The sun that had once shone in the town square now arrived only in small golden rays that pierced through the treetops, creating patches of light on the ground covered with dry leaves. The silence was broken only by the distant sound of a stream, and the low moans that the horse couldn't contain due to the pain of the wound. Iris walked alongside the animal for hours, her bare feet stepping on branches and pebbles that hurt, but she didn't complain. The image of the hatchet coming down on her protector's neck was etched in her mind like burning iron. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw again the red blood staining the white coat, heard again that whinny of pain that seemed to have torn her soul. When the afternoon began to cool, Iris realized that the horse was getting slower and more unsteady. The wound on his neck had stopped bleeding, but had left a deep mark that surely hurt terribly. The girl stopped and looked around, looking for a place where they could take shelter. It was then that she discovered a small natural grotto carved into the hillside. The opening was narrow, but enough for both of them to enter. The floor was of dry earth, and there were some stones that could serve as seats. It was a perfect hiding place, away from the eyes of anyone who might be looking for them. "Come," whispered Iris, gently pulling the horse's imaginary reins. The animal followed her, completely trusting in that little child who had become his only companion in the world. Inside the grotto, the darkness was almost complete. Iris snuggled against the horse's warm body, feeling his heavy but steady breathing. The animal, even in pain, positioned his body to protect the girl from the cold wind that came in through the opening of the cave. Hunger gnawed at Iris's stomach with an intensity that made her whole body ache. She hadn't eaten a decent meal in days, surviving only on the scraps she found in the trash. Now lost in the woods, she didn't even have that. The horse also needed food and water, and she didn't know how to get any of it. During the night, a heavy rain began to fall. The sound of the drops hitting the leaves of the trees echoed through the grotto like a melancholy symphony. Iris stretched, her little hands out of the opening, collecting rainwater in her palms to drink. The liquid was icy, but it was pure and refreshing. She also managed to direct some to the horse's mouth, who drank gratefully. In the days that followed, a strange routine was established between the two refugees. Iris left the grotto during the day to look for roots, berries, and leaves that they could eat. She had learned by watching other animals of the woods which plants were safe. The horse, even wounded, managed to graze some of the grass that grew. Near the stream, the girl developed an almost maternal care for her protector. She cleaned his wound with fresh water from the stream, removed leaves and dirt that stuck to the wound, and spoke to him constantly, even if her words were few and whispered. "It will be okay," she said, running her little hand through the animal's mane. "We're going to be okay." But the days in the woods took their toll. Iris began to have high fevers during the nights. Her little body trembled uncontrollably, and delusions took over her mind. She called for her mother, screamed in terror when she relived the scene of the hatchet, and woke up in panic, thinking that Valentine had found them. The horse perceived the girl's suffering. During the feverish crises, he lay down beside her, offering the warmth of his body to combat the chills. He gently licked her face when the tears flowed and remained awake all night, watching, protecting. It was on one of those terrible nights that Iris said her first complete words since they had fled. Between delusions and fevers, she looked into the horse's eyes and murmured, "Whitey. You is called Whitey." The name came naturally from her lips, as if she had always known that would be the name of her protector. Whitey neighed softly in response, as if accepting the name she had chosen. From that moment on, even in her feverish state, Iris referred to the horse by name, and a silent but profound communication was established between them. Malnutrition was severely affecting the girl. Her cheeks had become hollow, her arms looked like thin sticks, and her clothes hung loosely on her skeletal body. Whitey wasn't doing well either. The wound on his neck had healed poorly, leaving a mark that would never disappear, and he had lost a lot of weight from not being able to graze properly. It was a very windy morning when Iris woke up and realized that she couldn't get up on her own. Her legs were too weak, her vision blurred, and a constant dizziness made the world spin around her. Whitey immediately realized that something was wrong. He approached her and with extraordinary care helped her to lean on his legs to be able to stand. At that moment, both understood a terrible truth. They were slowly dying in that grotto. The woods that had been their refuge were becoming their prison. They needed help, they needed real food, they needed medical care. But leaving the grotto meant exposing themselves to the dangers of the world outside, including the possibility of being found by Valentine. While Iris struggled to stay conscious, supported by Whitey's warm body, a silent decision was made between them. They couldn't continue like this. They would have to leave the safety of the grotto and seek help, even if it meant putting their lives at risk once again. Fate, however, was already preparing a twist in their lives. That same morning, an elderly woman was walking through the woods, looking for medicinal herbs for her home remedies, without imagining that she was about to discover two beings who desperately needed her kindness. Granny Seb walked through the woods with firm steps, despite her 67 years. Her white hair was tied in a simple bun, and she carried a wicker basket where she kept the herbs she collected to make her home remedies. She was known throughout Harmony Creek as a healer and wise woman, a woman who had dedicated her life to caring for others, especially the most needy. That Thursday morning she was looking for dandelion leaves and lemon balm when she heard a strange sound coming from the direction of the creek. It was a low moan, almost imperceptible, but her ears, trained by decades of caring for the sick, immediately recognized the sound of someone in distress. Following the noise, Granny Seb reached the bank of the creek and was shocked by what she saw. A small girl, emaciated and covered in dirt, was lying unconscious next to a white horse that also seemed to be at the limit of its strength. The child had skin as pale as paper, lips cracked from dehydration, and trembled even in the morning. "Son," "Jesus Christ!" exclaimed Granny Seb, dropping her basket and running towards the two. Her experienced eyes quickly assessed the situation. The girl had a high fever and severe malnutrition, while the horse had a deep scar on its neck and appeared not to have eaten properly for days. With maternal care, Granny Seb picked up Iris in her arms. The girl weighed less than a rag doll, and her little body was burning with fever. "It's okay, honey," whispered the healer, even knowing that the child couldn't hear her. "Granny Seb will take care of you." Whitey raised his head with difficulty when he saw the woman approaching Iris. His protective instincts made him try to get up, but his weak legs couldn't support his weight. Granny Seb immediately perceived the connection between the two and spoke softly to the animal. "I'm not going to hurt her, sweetie. I'm going to take care of both of you." Something in the woman's voice reassured Whitey. Perhaps it was the genuine kindness in her tone, or the gentle way she held Iris. The horse relaxed and allowed Granny Seb to help him get up by leaning on her. Granny Seb's house was on the outskirts of town, a simple two-room construction with a large backyard surrounded by a wooden fence. It was the perfect home for someone who lived alone and dedicated her life to caring for medicinal plants and helping those in need. The journey to the house was slow and difficult. Granny Seb carried Iris in her arms while guiding Whitey step by step. The horse staggered, but his determination not to abandon the girl kept him moving. Several times during the way, Granny Seb needed to stop to rest and check if Iris was still breathing. When they finally arrived, Granny Seb first took care of the girl. She laid her on her own bed, covered her with clean blankets, and began the work of lowering her fever. She prepared a tea of elderflower leaves and managed to make Iris drink a few drops, even unconscious. With damp and fresh cloths, she carefully cleaned the child's face and body, removing weeks of dirt and sweat. Iris's condition was even worse than Granny Seb had imagined. In addition to severe malnutrition, the girl had infected wounds on her feet from walking barefoot in the woods, deep scratches on her arms and legs, and clear signs of psychological trauma. During the feverish delirium, she shouted disconnected words about hatchets and bad men. After stabilizing Iris, Granny Seb turned her attention to Whitey. The horse had laid down in the backyard, too exhausted to stand. The scar on his neck was inflamed and needed immediate care. Granny Seb prepared a paste with comfrey leaves and honey, known for their healing properties, and carefully applied it to the wound. "What monster did this to you, my boy?" she murmured while tending to the wound. Whitey remained quiet, as if understanding that he was finally safe. During the next 3 days, Granny Seb didn't leave the house for a moment. She alternated between caring for Iris, who remained feverish and delirious, and Whitey, who slowly began to regain his strength. She prepared cornmeal porridge with milk for the girl, forcing her to swallow small spoonfuls, even unconscious, and provided fresh hay and clean water for the horse. It was on the morning of the 4th day that Iris finally opened her eyes. Granny Seb was sitting next to the bed, knitting a small blanket, when she noticed that the girl was watching her with frightened but lucid eyes. "Good morning, honey," she said with the sweetest voice she could muster. "You're safe now." Iris tried to speak, but no sound came out of her throat. The trauma had stolen her voice, leaving her trapped in a silence that seemed insurmountable. Her eyes searched desperately for Whitey, and she only calmed down when Granny Seb led her to the window to see the horse grazing in the backyard. "He's okay, see?" said Granny Seb. "And you're going to be okay too. No one will hurt you here." But the tranquility didn't last long. That same afternoon, Granny Seb heard rumors in town that left her deeply worried. Valentine Cortez was spreading a completely different version of the events. According to him, a wild girl had tried to steal his fruits, and a dangerous and sick horse had attacked him for no reason. The farmer was offering a generous reward to anyone who brought information. about the whereabouts of the child and the animal, claiming that both represented a danger to the community. Some people had already started searching the woods, organized by Valentine himself. Granny Seb immediately understood that her life and the lives of her two protégés had changed drastically. They were no longer just an abandoned girl and a wounded horse who needed care. They were fugitives from a powerful and cruel man who would not hesitate to silence them permanently. As she watched Iris sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks and Whitey grazing serenely in her backyard, Granny Seb made a decision that would change the fate of all of them. No matter the danger they would face, she would protect those two innocent souls with her own life, if necessary. What she didn't know was that Valentine was already closer than she imagined, and that the real battle for survival was just beginning. A week had passed since Granny Seb found Iris and Whitey. The girl still hadn't spoken a single word, but her body was beginning to recover slowly. Her cheeks had gained a little color, and she could walk around the backyard without fainting. Whitey was also better. His scar had healed well under the healer's care, and he had returned to eating with appetite. That Saturday morning, Granny Seb was watching Iris playing silently with Whitey in the backyard when she heard someone knocking on the door insistently. Her heart jumped. Few people came to visit her, and with the whole situation involving Valentine, any visit could mean danger. It was Connie Baker, a 50-year-old neighbor who worked at the local church. Connie's face was red from running, and she was breathing with difficulty. "Granny Seb," she said, entering quickly and closing the door behind her. "I need to tell you something very important." "What is it, dear?" asked Granny Seb, leading her friend to the kitchen and serving her a glass of water. "It's about that girl you're taking care of," whispered Connie, looking nervously around. "I recognized her. She's Carmela's daughter, that girl who worked at Valentine's house about 5 years ago." Granny Seb's blood ran cold. She remembered Carmela well, a beautiful and hard-working young woman who had arrived in town from a distant farm. She had worked as a maid in Valentine's house for a few months until she mysteriously disappeared. Carmela? But didn't she leave for another state? "That's what everyone said at the time," replied Connie, lowering her voice even more. "But I was working at the church when she came to confess. The girl was pregnant, Granny Seb, and she was terrified. She said that the boss had forced her to do things she didn't want to." The revelation fell on Granny Seb like a lightning bolt. Her suspicions about the true nature of Valentine were being confirmed in the worst possible way. And what happened to her? No one knew for sure. One day she simply disappeared. Valentine said that she had taken her things and left for Chicago to work in a rich family's home. He even sent a letter, supposedly from her, saying that she was fine and wouldn't come back. Granny Seb felt a chill run down her spine. "Supposedly?" "I saw the letter, Granny Seb. The handwriting didn't look like Carmela's. And another strange thing, she left behind a gold chain that her mother had given her as a gift. Carmela would never leave home without that chain. It was always on her neck." At that moment, as if fate were listening to the conversation, Iris appeared at the kitchen door. She watched the two women talking in whispers, and, for a moment, her eyes met Granny Seb's. It was then that something extraordinary happened. Iris opened her mouth and, for the first time in weeks, spoke. "Mommy fell in the dark hole." The girl's words echoed through the kitchen like a cry of horror. Connie turned pale, and Granny Seb felt her legs weaken. "What do you mean, honey?" she asked, kneeling in front of Iris and holding her little hands. Delicately, the bad man pushed Mommy, continued Iris, her voice small but clear. "She screamed a lot. Then she didn't scream anymore. The hole was very deep." Granny Seb and Connie exchanged glances, both understanding the terrible truth that was being revealed by the child. Carmela had not left for another state. She had been murdered by Valentine, and her own daughter had witnessed the crime. "Where was this, my love?" asked Granny Seb with all possible delicacy. "At the big house. Behind the big house. There's a hole for water, but there's no water, only dark." Connie covered her mouth with her hands, trying to contain a scream. The well on Valentine's farm had dried up a few years ago and was never properly uncovered. It was the perfect place to hide a body. "That's why he wants to hurt you," murmured Granny Seb, the pieces of the puzzle finally fitting together. "You saw what he did to your mother." Iris nodded her little head. "Whitey saved me. The bad man wanted to put me in the hole too." The situation was even more serious than Granny Seb had imagined. They were not dealing only with a cruel man who had hurt a child and a horse. They were facing a murderer who had tried to kill a 4-year-old girl to silence the only witness to his crime. Connie rose from her chair, trembling. "Granny Seb, you need to take that girl far away from here. Valentine won't stop until he finds her, and when he finds her—" "I won't let anything happen to her," said Granny Seb with a determination that surprised even herself. Not to her, nor to Whitey, but at that very moment they heard the sound of horses approaching the house. Granny Seb ran to the window and saw a group of men on horseback stopping in front of the gate. Valentine was among them, riding a black horse, his dark eyes searching the property. "Granny Seb," he shouted in an authoritative voice, "we know that you are hiding a dangerous child and a sick animal. We are going to search your house." Connie turned even paler. How did he know? Granny Seb thought quickly. Someone had seen Iris in the backyard, or maybe noticed Whitey grazing. In a small town, it was impossible to keep secrets for very long. "Take Iris to the back room," she whispered to Connie, "and tell her to be very quiet." While Connie took the girl, Granny Seb opened the front door with her heart pounding in her chest. Valentine dismounted from his horse and walked towards the house with determined steps. His men followed him, all armed with machetes and ropes. "Good morning, Mr. Cortez," said Granny Seb, trying to keep her voice steady. "How can I help you?" "You know very well why I'm here," he replied with a cruel smile. "That wild child and that sick animal are a danger to the whole community. I'm going to take them where they belong." "I don't know what you're talking about," lied Granny Seb. "There's no child here." Valentine approached closer to her, and Granny Seb could see the pure evil in his eyes. "Don't lie to me, old woman. I know they're here, and when I find them I'll make sure they never bother anyone again." The threat was clear, and Granny Seb understood that her peaceful life had come to an end. From that moment on, she would be at war against the most powerful man in town, a war where the only weapons she possessed were her faith, her courage, and the love she felt for two innocent souls that fate had placed under her protection. Valentine pushed Granny Seb aside and entered the house with his men. "Turn everything upside down," he ordered. "I want every corner of this house searched, and don't forget the backyard. That damn horse must be around there." Granny Seb watched in silence as the men destroyed her simple house, turning over furniture, opening cabinets and scattering her belongings on the floor. Her heart was pounding, but she maintained a calm expression, praying internally that Connie would be able to keep Iris hidden and quiet. In the back room, Connie had hidden Iris inside an old trunk, covering her with old blankets. "Stay very quiet, honey," she whispered. "Don't make any noise." The girl, still traumatized by the memories that had resurfaced, obeyed without question. "Boss, I found the horse," shouted one of the men from the backyard. Whitey was at the back of the property, near a small wooden fence. Upon seeing the strangers approaching, the animal became nervous, his nostrils flaring as if he recognized the scent of danger. Valentine left the house and walked to the backyard. When he saw Whitey, his eyes filled with deep hatred. The scar on the horse's neck was a constant reminder of how he had been defied that morning in the town square. "There you are, you damn animal," he murmured. But something unexpected happened. Whitey, upon seeing Valentine, began to neigh loudly and paw the ground with agitation. It was as if the animal was trying to communicate something urgent, as if He wanted to tell everyone present about the wickedness of that man. "Silence that beast!" shouted Valentine, annoyed by the noise Whitey was making. Whitey's loud neighing attracted the attention of several people who lived nearby. Mrs. Johnson, a lady who lived next door, appeared at the fence to see what was happening. Soon after, more neighbors began to approach, curious about all the commotion. "Mr. Cortez," said Mrs. Johnson, "what's all this commotion at our Granny Seb's house?" "Nothing you need to worry about," he replied rudely. "I'm just recovering my stolen property." It was at this moment that Granny Seb made a courageous decision. Seeing that there were witnesses, she decided to confront Valentine publicly. "What property, Mr. Cortez? This girl and this horse arrived here wounded, needing care. What right do you have over them?" Valentine turned to her with eyes blazing with anger. "That child is a thief. She tried to steal my merchandise, and that animal attacked me when I tried to correct her." "That's a lie!" exclaimed a small but clear voice. Everyone turned in the direction of the voice. Iris had left her hiding place and was standing in the back doorway of the house, with Connie trying to hold her back. But the girl didn't want to hide anymore. "You lied! You're a liar and bad!" Valentine's face turned pale upon seeing the girl. There was something in his eyes that demonstrated pure panic, the fear of someone who had been discovered. "Silence! That child!" he shouted to his men. But Iris continued speaking, her voice getting stronger with each word. "You pushed my mommy in the dark hole. I saw. She screamed a lot and then stopped screaming." A murmur of shock ran through the neighbors who had gathered. Mrs. Johnson put her hand on her chest, horrified. "What hole? What mother?" "Carmela," said Connie, coming out with Iris in her arms. "This girl's mother is Carmela, who worked on his farm 5 years ago." "Carmela didn't leave for Chicago," continued Iris, pointing directly at Valentine. "He threw her in the hole that doesn't have water. I saw it from the window. Then he wanted to throw me too. But Whitey saved me." Valentine tried to deny it, but his voice trembled. These are fantasies of a traumatized child Carmela left of her own free will. I even have the letter she sent." "Letter that you yourself wrote," accused Connie. "I saw the handwriting. It wasn't Carmela's." At this moment, Granny Seb remembered something that Connie had mentioned before. "The chain," she said. "Connie, you talked about Carmela's gold." "Chain! That's right! Carmela would never leave without the chain that her mother gave her." Iris, hearing about the chain, began to cry. Mommy's chain shone in the sun. It fell when he pushed her. One of the neighbors, Mr. Peterson, who knew the farm well from having worked there, spoke loudly. "Then let's go to the dry well on the farm. If this girl is telling the truth, the chain must be there." Valentine became desperate. "No one is going to enter my property. That's trespassing." But the crowd of neighbors had grown, and everyone was outraged by the accusations. The pressure was so great that Valentine couldn't prevent a group from heading to his farm. In the dry well, exactly as Iris had described, they found not only Carmela's gold chain, but also remnants of clothes and bones that confirmed the terrible truth. Iris's young mother had been murdered and thrown into that hole 5 years before. When they returned with the evidence, Valentine was cornered. The whole town now knew the truth. His own men abandoned him, horrified by the discovery that they had served a murderer. I didn't want to," stammered Valentine, finally confessing. "She was going to tell about what happened between us. It was going to ruin my reputation. It was an accident. I just wanted to scare her." "And the girl?" asked Mrs. Johnson with indignation. "Was that also going to be an accident?" Valentine couldn't answer. His life of power and cruelty had come to an end. The townspeople themselves, who had previously respected him out of fear, now expelled him from Harmony Creek. His lands were confiscated by the community to pay for the crimes he had committed. Granny Seb formalized the adoption of Iris, who flourished under her loving care. The girl completely recovered her ability to speak and smile and never had nightmares again. Whitey became a permanent part of the family, grazing freely in the backyard and serving as a faithful companion to Iris. The little house was transformed into a home full of laughter and love. Iris grew up strong and healthy, always wearing a gold chain around her neck, the same one that belonged to her mother, as a reminder that true love never dies. And so, in Harmony Creek, goodness triumphed over evil, truth conquered lies, and 3 wounded souls, a girl, a horse, and a healer, found the family they had always sought, proving that even in the most desperate situations, courage and love can overcome any adversity.